I will try to give two talks one by one, and maybe because I'm on the stage, maybe you like to ask me the first talk, and then we go for the second talk. This is actually a principle which has been mentioned repeatedly even with emergency physicians, which is called damage control surgery. And I've been involved with this both clinical and experimental. So I will try to give you the perspective of damage control surgery. When do you use it? How do you use it? Does it have side effects? Is it a good technique? Okay, so we like that. This kind of all right, that's great. Okay. The basic thing in trauma, management of trauma, by the way, is called the concept analysis. It's a very basic principle which is actually not published. It's just, I've listened once to Dr. Epstein in 2002, and the principle here is that you can collect a lot of information with time. But the problem is that if you with the information increase, a lot of information of time, the probability of death also will increase. So you have to act on incomplete information. Time is very important. If you wait too much, the patient will die. So now the principle of damage control surgery actually came from the military, and that's, you remember this called being hit. So if you have a ship that has been hit, the basic two principles are to stop the holes, plug the holes, and stop the fire. You don't go and clean windows. The ship will actually sink. And this principle was mentioned by Pringle in 1908, and then Feliciano has publicized it's called the stage laparotomy. You don't do the whole procedure at the same time. Now, the mortality in damage control surgery was very high. It's about 50%. We did a systematic review on this almost a few years ago. We collected all the data on this. So you usually do damage control surgery in very sick patients. And when do you do it? You do it when really the patient is on the edge. They have acidosis, coagulopathy, and hypothermia. Now, if you feel you want to terminate your operation in a very sick patient who's almost going to die, then you think about it. It's when you cannot control the bleeding by direct hemostasis that you need indirect methods. And finally, if you cannot close the abdomen. Sometimes the abdomen is so much distended that you cannot close it. So the principles of damage control starts from identifying the damage control patient so early, because if you are so late, the patient will die. And then you control the bleeding, you control end contamination, you take the patient to the ICU, you control the physiology, and then with acidosis, hypothermia, etc., and you come back and do definitive surgery. Now the issue here is that the trauma management and surgery is a physiological management. It's not an anatomical management. You need a patient who is alive, who has a normal pH, who has normal coagulopathy. So let's say you have a bowel that in a very sick patient, you don't need to anastomosis, you just tie it. Or there is a liver damage, you pack it. And then later on, after you correct the physiology, you go back and you do the proper repair. Now, how do you do that? It's actually, you do packing, you can do stapling. Now, for example, if you have a bladder rupture or injury, you don't need really at that stage to repair it. You put a Foley's catheter and you tie around it. Sometimes for big vessels, you put shunts temporarily, and then after the patient is stabilized, you take him back and then you do the proper surgery. Now, this is one of the beautiful papers written by the military about how do you do damage control surgery. If the patient actually responds and he is in good condition, and you could really think that he can tolerate a major operation, then you continue. But the moment you feel that he's deteriorating, he's going into acidosis, hypothermia, you are losing the patient, Then you stop, you go back to damage control principle, you take him to the ICU, do the procedures, and then later on, you take him back. And when do you take him back? There is no limit when to take the back, by the way. Sometimes you take them within 24 hours minimum, better 36 hours, 48 hours till you are really happy about him. But if you still feel that this patient needs more work, you can go up to 72 hours. There's no problem with that. If you leave packs more than that, there is a risk of infection, but you have to appreciate that you have to weigh always the risk of surgery against the risk of really a very sick patient. So you try to stabilize the patient before you take him back to theater. Even up to 72 hours is okay. Now this is one of the patients we treated. He's a local guy having a sports motorcycle accident, and he's been hit on his belly. And you can see the bar injury on his abdomen. This is the bar of the motorcycle. See that? Now he was very hypotensive. Initially his blood pressure was okay, but he became hypotensive, and he had rigid, and he had a lot of fast injury. Fast was positive. If you look to the CT scan, you can see there is a blush in the hepatis. It's completely actually destroyed all the way, and there is fluid around the spleen. This is the porta hepatis, and there is fluid around the spleen. So this patient was actually taken to surgery. He had splenectomy. He had actually they had a retroperitoneal hematoma with thrombosis of the left renal artery. So what would you do in this scenario? A patient who's hemodynamically unstable. Actually, you don't do anything because he will live with one kidney. So life is before organ. And he was coagulopathic, hypothermic, so the surgeon decided to pack him. You can see the pack. And he decided to put a drain. All right, but he did nothing for the renal artery. If you look there, we wrote a management algorithm actually after this. How, if in a multiple trauma patient, when do you renal artery reconstruction? So you think on the overall picture. You don't just insist you want to repair organs. You think that, okay, I want a living patient, not a good operation in a dead patient. Now that's the patient after the operation. That's the drain, which drained, and that's the pelvic drain. He drained about he had received 13 pints of blood. After that, he was resuscitated. A lot of fresh frozen plasma, platelets, etc. till you're happy about him. Before you take him to theater, you do an angiography, and this is after 72 hours. There was no bleeding from the liver. This patient was taken to the theater, the packs were removed, and everything was okay. The patient actually went home. Now after that, just to tell you, now recently in advanced hospitals, this patient started to have biliary fistula after surgery in the drain, and ERCP was done, and there was a leakage in one part of the parts. He had stenting, and he recovered without a need for another operation. So now the new trend actually in trauma centers is to combine both the interventional and the surgical techniques. What's going on here? All right. The other thing is to control the bowel contamination. It's coming back, huh? So we spoke actually about damage control surgery is that you try your best in a patient who's hemodynamically unstable to do the minimum and to restore the physiology, not the anatomy. After you are able to do that, then you go and operate on them. And one of the core techniques to do is really to close the bowel. I was honored to be called in Linköping University in 2002 to supervise a PhD student who's on the left side, Dr. Pia Overson, and this is her PhD on the damage control surgery. We did two models, trying to look to the role of bowel ligation in different scenarios. And the first scenario was actually was published in Journal of Trauma. And we tried to evaluate the effect of early ligation on the overall status of the patients, of the animals. These are actually pigs, and they were standardized. They were shocked by 9mm bullets from the same distance in a specific position. And we had a standardized model of injuries up to 9 to 11 bowel injuries without massive bleeding. So what we did, we divided them into two groups, one group tying and one group doing proper reanastomosis. The conventional surgery is reanastomosis, the other one was actually tying. And if you look to the hemodynamics of those patients, the bowel ligation actually is the ligation. You can see that the cardiac output was much better. And the systemic resistance, vascular resistance came less, indicating that they are better. And what we concluded from that study is that early rapid ligation of the bowel actually improves the cardiovascular status of the animal. Why we did that? Because you cannot do randomized controlled trials and damage control surgery in humans. It's non-ethical. It's non-ethical, and there are no randomized controls. So at least we want to understand what happens in damage control surgery in the animals. Now, the other thing which was described today by our colleague, Dr. Young, is an orthopedic surgeon, is that also there is something called orthopedic damage control surgery, in which you do external fixation. This is a patient who was in shock. He had both splenic injury and renal injury. We had to take them out. And the patient, of course, he was unstable initially, and you cannot do internal fixation here with the fracture. You have actually to do external fixation, and once they are stabilized, you fix them back. So the principle of also not only damage control surgery in the abdomen, but there's also in the orthopedic, in the spine, etc. It's actually a principle more than really a specific region. Now, damage control surgery came to military, by the way, and the first clear time it was practiced was in the Iraq War. And in the Iraq War, what they did, they have 5 stages of operations. The first stage, actually, if you look to Iraq, we increase it. The first stage was level 1 battlefield team, which is very near to the battle. After that, whether they do initial thing and then they send them to the level 2, and it's a forward level 2 in which they actually give back to the battle. Actually, they do abbreviated operations, they do laparotomies if they are needed, they resuscitate, and then after that, by the helicopter, they are carried to a combat support hospital level. And that's actually, you see the personnel, they're 20, but yet they become about 500. And you can see they have more blood, about 150 packed with blood cells. The other one has only 50. And here they do preoperative resuscitation, definitive resuscitation, and then second lock operation if needed or not, and then postoperative resuscitation. So what they do initially, they stabilize the patient, they send them to another hospital where they do the second lock operation, and if they do actually check things and see what's going on. Now, if they cannot solve the problem, they would actually fly all the patient to US Army in Germany. Actually, in Germany, it's the only recognized level 1 trauma outside USA is in Germany. And they do definitive operation or ICU care. And actually, they carry the patients on special airplanes, fully ICU intensive ICUs. After they have controlled this, now we come to the function. Now we have 4 stages here to control the function. Let's say there's a plastic operation. They take them back to USA for definitive operation care, like plastic, nerve injury, whatever it is. So this principle of taking damage control surgery in the pre-hospital, ground zero, was a new concept in actually military surgery. Now, this is a study by Ramison. He shunted vascular vessels. During the war in Iraq, he did 30 shunts, and you can see here that if you have proximal shunts, the patency actually is the same. It's higher. I mean, the patency of the upper limb is much higher in the proximal than distal. It's understandable because as you go distally, the resistance will be higher. But if you look to the distal limbs, it did not matter actually, because both of them actually, whether you tie them or put a shunt, the results will be the same. So either if it's a major vessel, you can do the shunting up actually. That's the message, main message. Now, there were reports later on that damage control surgery may be harmful. Not in all patients you should do damage control surgery. And we did the second study, we did actually combined bleeding plus bowel ligation. And the same thing, we divided two groups, a group of ligation, a group of definitive bowel repair, a hypotensive patient now, hypotensive anemia. We did the same model, we did the hemorrhagic shock model, and then we did the operation after shooting the animal with actually a bullet. And you can see here that in the conventional group, surgery, resection, and anastomosis of the small bowel were 9, while the other one is ligation were 9. And we were surprised actually to notice that there is no difference in the mean arterial pressure, but if you look to the systemic vascular resistance, there was no difference. Look to the p-value up, please. It's really, you have to look to the p-value. There is no difference in the blood pressure, no difference in the systemic vascular pressure, no difference in the cardiac output. P-value is 0.68 because this is not a simple analysis. We call it repeated measurement analysis. It's one p-value for the whole process. That's the way it should be done. Not like people usually do per analysis, per analysis. That's not the proper way. So you have a p-value for all the process that tells you whether this is a good thing. Now, what worried us? I mean, if you look, the operation time for ligation was almost 13 minutes for these 9 bowel cuts. Only 13 minutes you would have finished that. Now, if you want to do primary anastomosis, it took 2 hours in a very sick animal, which is not accepted. Now, anyway, I mean, they survived, there was no difference, but really what worried us, and I raised concern in many conferences actually, that's about 10 years ago, is that the animals who had multiple ligation had acidosis, indicating that they are worse actually, not better. And then later on, people realized that you may get bowel ischemia if you do damage control unnecessary. You have to look back into them. You don't need to do them unless their benefit is more than their harm. So you don't leave the patient's abdomen open unnecessarily. You have really to use it only in very sick patients. You cannot close the abdomen. Patient is really hypothermic, temperature sometimes 33. PT is prolonged sometimes, and also you see that there's a lot of blood loss, and you know acidosis. Usually you can easily do the ABG on table and it will guide you. So in conclusion, actually, damage control surgery in this model, severe model, raised a lot of concern if you do multi-ligation unnecessary in that scenario. Okay, so you should select your damage control surgery patients. Now, it's very important, I'll show you an example how damage control surgery training is very good. This is from the STC, actually a model that I have attended in 2004 in Dubai, under Professor Prof came from South Africa and he gave us talk. You can even ligate part of the lobe of the liver. You see, it's strange, but you can put a piece of cloth and ligate part which is destroyed. And another technique that taught us to do shunting for big vessels. It's a very useful thing, really. If you are not expert, just put a shunt, tie it, and send it to someone who can really repair it. Don't try to do things that you are not really trained to do. And this is a very nice technique that the sandwich technique he taught us by putting abdominal plastic over the bowel, then putting gauze, then covering it like a sandwich technique. And I used it first time 2004. In North Korean guy who fell from up, he has massive bleeding in the abdomen with abdominal compartment syndrome, I could not close his belly. You can see that I developed put IV bags between these two tapes and then put it between actually to protect a layer to protect the bowel, and you put the gauze and you put this and you change it every 2 days. You don't really need to change it regularly. This is a cheap method. You don't need to put the KCI, which is very expensive. Maybe you can close this in 24 hours, 48 hours, it's okay. It's a very useful for countries with low resources. Now I'll tell you this last story. This is a 90 years old patient who was recently operated on. He had a heavy epigastric hernia since 20 years, that he lived with it for a long time, and he suddenly came with sudden pain in the epigastric region. So I looked to the bowel, you see there is no flow in the mesentery, so I took him directly to the theater. It's a bowel ischemia for me with strangulation. So you see here, the bowel is really that area is, I wish I had the laser, I wouldn't control it from here, but you can see the bowel actually is being very black in color, so you do resection and osmosis. So once I did follow up for this patient, he was hemodynamically stable, he was in great condition, but I always do post-op ultrasound for the lung, for the abdomen, for the DVT, and this is a routine ultrasound. And to my surprise, he had fluid in the abdomen that I did not know what it is. So I got the cannula, I tapped him directly under ultrasound, and it was blood. So that's about 1.5 liters of blood at least, and he's an old man, 90. Is at high risk to collapse anytime, and we cannot save him. So we said, okay, let's take him to the theater. The moment I took him to the theater, looked to his IBC, it's only 8 millimeter, and we gave him fluid, but not enough. And the moment we anesthetized him, his blood pressure dropped 40/20. 90 years old man, so the anesthetist was worried, it's an MI. But with this IBC, I told him it's not an MI, so I transfused 2.5 liters of fluid in less than half an hour. And this is what you see, it's the IBC actually picked up. So then I opened him, and this is I published recently a review how to measure the IBC. There are techniques that you have to learn, there are pitfalls in it, you have to know how to do it. Then what I did, I packed him with gauze, I put a clip, and then I looked again, so to stop the bleeding in a quick way, in less than half an hour, I put the gauze, I put the clips, and then this is the technique that you want to measure the IBC, it should be in the center. That's around, it should be exactly in the center, you see? Because you can do it either obliquely or you can do it peripherally and gives you wrong result. And then, you can see this is the post-operative on the left side. The arrow is the IBC, and the whitish lines are the gauze. So I use ultrasound here to be sure that the IBC is not overpacked. Because if it's overpacked, venous return will be reduced and the patient may die from your packing. And then I followed him up, you see the IBC opened up with fluid resuscitation. And actually this case was published as a new technique actually in the literature. This has never been done before. Just recently been published in our journal of research. Now if you look at the patient, we took him to the ICU, see how did we resuscitate him, lactic acid dropped, pH improved, basal excess decreased, you see it's actually, coagulation profile, PT, became normal, creatinine also actually dropped, although this looks normal for an old man, actually it was relatively, his kidney may be affected too much. C-reactive protein also dropped. Then you take the patient later on, 36 hours, you remove the packs, you check the bleeding, there was no bleeding, close the abdomen, and the patient actually went home without any complication. So just to conclude, actually, real damage control surgery is a technique that is very useful. It depends mainly on the decision. Don't overdo it. Do it on the proper patients. You have it help even those who do damage control surgery. They have a high risk of mortality, and this has been shown that it can be applied in the war zones and in the rural areas, to save patients. Now, if you look here, we go. I mean, all of these, I've been applying it in the down, trying to improve my skills, did research on that. This circle is very important. You have really to try to think in 3 lines. You really have to think about your patients, train to do better for them, get ideas and apply them. And I really like to quote, this is a statement of a Nobel Prize in pharmacology. He said the feedback from the application to the science often supplies key insights and tools so that science is nourished by its application. Science is nourished by its application. Our group came to the view that science and its application are an indivisible whole, and this is actually what I believe in. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much. We will proceed to his next lecture, that is promoting trauma research, which probably will be a continuation of his last slide he gave just now. Thank you, Dr. Professor Fikri.
Okay, can we open the next slide? Okay. Is it ready now? Yeah, it's okay. Again, thank you very much for giving me this chance to talk to you. I mean, yesterday I was approached by, many young people asking, how can we do research? Can you help us? I mean, it's very important. I will give you some advice. And the most important thing you should do, you should get a mentor who really can guide you. There is no replacement for that. But I will show you how did we do it in a country like UAE, really getting such high impact in the trauma part. If you look, this is once I actually joined UAE. UAE had one of the highest mortality of road traffic accidents. Where do you think UAE is here? It's the top mortality in the WHO report. And if you want really to reduce mortality in any host, in any country, the key actually, it's not a single man job. It's actually a system that you have to address. And the key issue for it, if you notice, research. You cannot progress without research. You can never progress without research. And this is an editorial actually I wrote in 2005 by an American company, by an American journal. Research in developing countries is completely different from developed countries. I've worked in both and I know the differences. There is difference of the research value. People in developing countries don't look too much to people who do research. They may respect them, but they really don't think that they are important. They think they can get the solutions from outside. There is lack of group work. Everyone has an ego. I am. Actually, there is a recent paper that we discussed in our workshop telling that group intelligence is increases the single intelligence by 10 times. You may be a very clever guy, but being within a group, you will be 10 times cleverer. So don't think that you don't need the others. Many times I discuss with colleagues over the phone, even I'm really trying to be very humble, asking for their opinion for difficult cases. Research funds is none. If you look to the GDP in USA, it's 2% of the GDP for research. Once I came to UAE, it was 0.2 in a rich country, 0.2 of GDP for research. There is no training. You come in an environment, people really don't know what you're speaking about. What is a randomized control trial? What's the difference between case control study and prospective cohort study, for example? They don't know that. They have never been trained in that. Even the p-value, they don't understand what's a p-value. Once I came in 2001, how the doctors could use computers. They are old generation, they have controlling everything, and informatics is very important that can progress our research. And finally, I think we just stress the ethical considerations. You cannot take a human being as a guinea pig. And some companies internationally, we know that they drop their drugs, risk trials in poor countries like Vietnam. You have to respect. One of the most slides that affected me in the conference, that shaped me, is that we take pictures for patients, but it shaped me to say treat the patient as a human, not as an object. This is very, very important. Now, I came actually, initially, I was trained in Perth, Sweden, and New Zealand, Perth, but then I landed where? I landed in Emirates. It's a very small country. And the task I was asked is to promote research in Emirates. Trauma research, there's nothing actually, very little, I will show you that. But how can I do that? It's a tough job. But my advice to you, if you want to succeed in any hospital you work in, you think globally, but act locally. You need people to help you. You train them. If you collaborate with 100 people who don't not do nothing, you will end with nothing. You will be more confused. You train people who can help you. And what I really did in my area, I facilitated nationally. I help everyone. But I never asked anyone to go and take their data or pick their data because I know it may not be accurate. And if it's not accurate, all my effort will be lost. Because accuracy of data is the most important thing. If you give me accurate data, then I can tell you, okay, whatever conclusions are there. Now, if you look to this, this is a problem. My area is even more difficult. I'm an oncologist, not a cardiologist. I'm a trauma surgeon. And trauma is the least specialty that receives money. Look, the trauma is the maximum cause of life death in USA. It's the cause of 60% of life death in our country, but see the money that it receives. So I don't have money. And I have to solve a major problem. And that's to promote research in a country with a culture without really research. I tried initially to make journal clubs, statistical packages, etc. It does not work unless you have committed little number of people who really want to make a change. That's my first advice. And I ask a question here. You have here a big audience. Maybe they attended my lecture, workshop on medical writing last year. And please don't answer who that is. What do you think is the most important thing, most important skill in research? If someone knows that, let him actually stand up and tell me. Don't be frightened. Just I want to know whether you know the answer. What is the most? Is it training? Is it mentorship? Excuse me? Patience. Okay, great. All right. I like that because every fellow who comes to me, I tell him I need three things from you the first day: honesty, integrity, accuracy, and patience. Actually, you cannot be a researcher without this, but these are not enough. The most important thing actually is to have a clear research question. It's your road. If you don't do that, you will never be able to reach anything. I'll give you examples. Voltaire says, judge a person by their questions rather than their answers. And I'll give you an example. This is my problem in UAE. Someone who is dead on the road. And you want to do research in that. You know, research is complex. You observe this in your sitting. You have a thing. You have stroke in heat. I've seen this many times, and I really try to push some of your colleagues to that projects. You have this problem. It's a unique problem. But the problem with this, the reality is complex. It's not affected only by the weather. It's not affected by actually the management. It's not affected by the policy makers. It's a complex thing. So you ask yourself a very specific question. What is that? You make hypotheses. If we reduce speed, does this decrease the death? That's very specific. I'm only studying speed. I'm not studying road traffic collisions. And we did that, by the way. And then you come to study, you do an experiment or an analysis or a cohort study, and you answer the question. And by answering this, you get more questions, and you start refining other questions. But you can answer one question in a study. I was once in New Zealand working with people. They're really leading, and they spent 6 months not trying to solve a problem. They tried to do 6 answers in the same question. I was just passing by the library. What's going on? Well, I'm discussing all this. Said we are trying, and I got your problem. You try to answer 100 questions in the same study, and in half an hour you just put the plan. All the problems were solved. So try to formulate your research question very well by reading before you go and do research. Now, I give this example. You know how do you know horses run? They cover their eyes, so they can see only in the front. The horse only sees in front. Does not. If it's going to look to the side, it will turn its head. That is research. You go focused, very focused, and you go all the way till the end. But you have to know your direction, otherwise you go the wrong direction. Now I'll give you some examples. I'm sorry, I'm so humble for this. I really want to because young people wanted me to share my experience, and I will. I was once in a meeting in trauma, in Prof, Mr. Prof. And was sitting there. And then Dr. Sudhakar Rao usually go to the reports and said, and today there was a collision injury with cars. Now what's happened to me is you should really be stimulated. This is unusual problem. I said, what? What kangaroo with cars? I never heard about this. I never seen it. And then I went directly to the trauma registry. Picked up the word kangaroo. It's a specific word. In the search techniques, if you have a specific word, it's easy to reach it. And I was lucky in that. And I put cut by his hand. Once he's playing with kangaroo, eating kangaroos, he cuts his hand. It will come. But at the end, you look there, and you had about 44 cases of kangaroo with collisions. You take this data, because I was observing this once I was walking on the streets of Australia. This is a picture I took there. And we ended a study that went to Journal of Trauma in less than 3 weeks. I can tell you this is very difficult. So all what it came is a simple idea that stimulates you. No one will give you this, your supervisor will not give you, unless you have inquired inside your brain trying to answer questions. Like the kids who actually make memory puzzling, they were exploring the unknown. This ended actually to first, I think one of its best reviews. Actually, I did that before. I presented many times, and then a group of Cram Canada published it. More probably they saw what I presented. Because I had experience with moose in Australia, I had experience with kangaroos in Australia, moose in Sweden, and camels in the United Arab Emirates. And you can transfer knowledge very easily. Now, the first day, I joined Emirates. I was in September 2001, and I was sitting there, and there is a guy whom a camel carried him from the neck up, and really he got a brain infarction. And then, oh my God, what is this? I've never heard of that. I never heard of that. You go and search in the literature, no one speaks too much about this. I studied the behavior of the kangaroo, the behavior of the horse. No one studied the behavior of the camel. So that's where you start, because you start properly. Now with this is the first camel. It was accepted in one day in Journal of Trauma. One day, I tell you. The editor actually, Professor Rui, at that time, he's the professor of Burns. Now this idea, it's not enough just to publish and be happy. You have to build your real research. We did the only prospective study of the world that took us 10 years, because the numbers are small. And this is initially, we wrote about camel bites and injury. We wrote about, this is a systematic review about camel bites to the leg. This is actually a prospective study of camel-related injuries. Also neurosurgery nerve surgery that went so quickly. What is unique here? That is an area no one studied before. It's exciting, it's really something unusual. You explore the unknown. If you look here, it's built up. Look. Image, prospective study, systematic view, prospective study. Every step leads to the other step. Now, one day, I was looking to the BBC, and I saw this on the BBC on the 4th of February, I still remember, 2015. And where was it? It was in Uganda. And where was actually this husband, this crocodile has swallowed his pregnant woman. So he became so angry that he captured him, and all the village made this special call to kill him out, and they killed the crocodile. And where did they take the crocodile? They took it to university in Uganda that I know, specifically the editor of African Health Sciences. I know him personally. So I searched the red line, I called him by phone. Actually, Dr. Professor Tamini, do you want me to write an editorial comparing camel bites and crocodile bites? He said, yeah, that's a great idea. I wrote my door for 2 weeks, and I ended actually with an excellent editorial that summarizes the whole literature, comparing the camel bite to the crocodile bite. What material I had? Nothing. You got my point. If you're really interested in answering questions, you can answer this. Now, Ashraf, in one on call, Ashraf, my sincere colleague, he called me on the phone one day, and he told me, Professor Zidan, there is a male who has a 6th tire, you know the 6th tire? Of a car of large wheel ruptured. And the chest X-ray looked normal, and I want to discharge. My first reaction to him was, Ashraf, don't discharge him. Here we have a blast lung injury. I've seen this with bombs. Maybe this worked like a bomb. So that's just X-ray with minimum dilatation of the mediastinum up. We did a CT scan and I was right. There is a contusion in the lung. There is even small pneumothorax, which was treated conservatively. Now what is this? This is a case, a single case. It's actually when we searched the whole literature, and we had another one within that period. And imagine what happened. This is the ring. You see the ring of the has actually, it's a major injury. We look to the literature, the mortality is 30%. It's even doubly more. So what we did simply, we went by an image which was published, dramatic image, because one image tells more than 1,000 words. We ended with the only review in the literature with tire rupture, and we had our own series that we collected over a few years. So look here, we start with an image, review, case series. Okay. Then also we explained the mechanism of it, which is different from bounce because you have only primary, secondary, tertiary. The primary is the explosion, secondary is the ring, and tertiary is you've been thrown by a ring or the pressure outside. So it's not like a bomb completely, three mechanisms only. Okay, one day, now you say, okay, we don't, I mean, we were in Egypt with Ashraf in 19th of June 2009. And when I was actually invited, the person who gives an echo was not with us. I have my own slides on basic echo. I do teach how to do it clinically, but I always invite a cardiologist. But then at that time, he could not come with us. So this is actually in Egypt. And then, how can I teach echo? That's the real picture, by the way. Ashraf sent it to me. Thank you, Ashraf. I never had that picture. So how would I teach echo in a place without slides? So I took the apple, and it's very delicious after you finish, actually, by the way. So I went to the kitchen, I took an apple, asking for a specific knife, and I started telling them, this is the apical view of the heart, this is the long parasternal view of the heart, and these are the three short axes of the heart. Actually, you have the mitral, tricuspid, epic. You know, anyone who does echo, he knows what I mean. Oh my God, then we finished the course in Egypt. And I was on the airplane with my colleague, told him, his name is Noor. Noor, this is a great paper. He told me, what? I thought he told me this is an apple, it's not a great paper. I told him, we'll see. So next day morning, I locked my door, and you know Newton actually, he does idea for apple. Why not to get an idea for an apple? So I said, these are my own drawings that have been ready. You photograph the apple, you cut the apple, you write your letter to where? To the top journal, medical education, #1 in medical education. I sent it 6 p.m. Next day morning, it was accepted. So does that mean money? It does not need money. It just means that you think. You got my point. So you have everyone who have your brain. So I actually, if you think and inquire and read, there is no limit to what you can do. Now we have the money, we have the brain, we have the brain. Okay, is money important? Yes, it is important. If you want to get fellows, some of my fellows really, as a senior registrar, I pay them $250,000 a year to come and work with me at one stage. It's a lot of money. And we have ways to generate money. But if you don't have money, I didn't have money once I went to Emirates, and I started my idea, I wanted to registry. I went to the hospital and told me, no, this is research. What have we to do with it? I went to the university, no, this is actually academic work, we will not support this. So I ended without anyone supporting me for 1.5 years. Shall I stand and stop? No. I was working with my cars, with my kids, in a hurry, and looking into bicyclists and their behavior in the streets and calculating that in a simple form. And we ended with an excellent paper. So you start getting trust, people start to are judging when you are really, this is a businessman, they start funding you, then the money does not become a problem. But money without thinking is actually you are wasting the money of your community. I've seen millions being wasted. I can tell you I've maybe got 150,000 dirhams for my registry from the university. Other people with 7 million. We had maybe more than 100 papers. They had maybe only 2 papers. Just to give you the idea. Money is not everything. It's important, but it's not everything. Now this is an example of a study without money. It's a global study. but you get the data and you analyze the data. Now, it's very important to plan your research before you start. Asking, what is the message? Does this paper or case report worth writing? Has it been published before? Whom shall I target my audience? What format shall I put it and write it? What is the target journal? But most important is asking questions. And I showed you the image of questions. The questions sometimes are so complex, you have to make them simple. And if you make them simple, then you can get more answers, and then questions and answers and so on. Now, this is, Prof. Zidan is a good friend of mine, he's in Australia. He spent all his life mapping the questions. He does a search to see which gaps are there in the literature, so he can answer these questions. So you should know which questions to answer. And this is what I did actually. In United Arab Emirates, we did a mapping for all the research once I came. You generate the questions, you prioritize the questions, you search, and then you see the quality of your research, and finally, you get a list of what areas are missing. And these are the 4 areas which are missing till now, most of them. I was discussing last week with the pre-hospital people. Pre-hospital care, trauma systems, no real studies on it, trauma registries, post-hospital rehabilitation. I'm a trauma surgeon. What's feasible for me? I cannot do anything with rehabilitation. Neither trauma system, I'm not a politician. Neither rehabilitation. So I ended with trauma registry. And then from there, you have to build your group, people who trust you, who want to be part of your group, and then you go in this circle which was mentioned, planning, action, evaluation, and believe me, this is on the Sunday, 21st September 2001, that's the paper we had together, on a very rough paper, planning what are we going to do. We had our trauma group, you've seen many of the presentations of the trauma group, with a clear mission that we should really promote research and education. I presented one of our educational activities, which is FAST yesterday. You know, you can recognize this guy, Ashraf. He voluntarily came to help me in 2003. In this room, which was donated by the hospital, without a program, we developed our own program from scratch, and we had a very good program. Now, you designate each person to a function. One has to do data collection, I usually analyze it, they report it, and so on, design, we're done by information technology for the database, and we collect it, I analyze it, we report it, and we refined our registry 3 times. But we didn't keep the data for ourselves. We helped everyone in the department. We gave the data for physicians, psychologists, gynecologists, name. They got papers on their name from our own data without any hard feeling. We want the data to be out. There is nothing wrong that they publish the papers from our own data. And actually, we started with 3 departments. We gave that to everyone, you don't believe. That's why we really succeed. So we really have to collaborate with people. Now, this registry was started from Paris. We defined it. It was actually 3 at that stage. 3 countries actually, centers actually asked for that. Now, you need a lot of time management. We had in 24 or 9th of June, before the summer vacation, we had 6 papers to revise in 2 weeks. So you have to make a management plan, which consists of tasks, manpower, and time frame. And then you give each person a color to do his job. And we did the task management. We finished the papers 1 day before 2 weeks, and all of them are accepted. So you have sometimes skill. You need some management skills to manage actual research. This may be simple: priorities, where to go, etc. Now, just to show our group, our publication has never been actually consistent over time. There is persistence for almost 15 years. And you can see 2 peaks. Conferences like this, you use it to promote your young doctors. You give them a chance to present themselves. And then the other thing I want to stress, that you look for clinical observation. We observe that locally, Emirati people have more liver injury than Pakistani and expatriates. And we thought this is maybe like the one I showed you, it is the sports bar. And believe me, this was true. You look to the age of the Emirati is actually dash. It's young, they are younger than the non-Emirati, but the abdominal injury is much more than the Emirati. And look at the p-value, 0.008. So it's clinical sense. If you feel something clinically, you can easily, now you have numbers, now you can argue with politicians. Also, the other advice, look local. These are, we call them camel jockeys, they used to be in UAE. And then there have been a lot of debate about them, and this is a small child with extradural fill in his head, 4 or 5 years old. A very sensitive issue. Now, in 2005, they were replaced by robots. So they ride robots in camels. Not, that's a great chance. No one has this. I mean, Qatar started, but we have the data for 10 years, and we could really compare the effect of the law. You can see after the law, pediatric injury completely disappeared. This is called an injury prevention replacement. Replace it, okay? So you get a chance to do research. Now, this one, of course, you have an ego. You come in and give talks, all right? It's an ego. I was honored actually in 2012, I was given the clinical research on the level of Abu Dhabi. But this is not me, honestly. You are representing a group who really worked hard. You have that ego, okay? But we have, and show this slide that I want to show it. Why do we do this? We do it because we had good teachers. This is my mentor, Prof. I'm so honored to him, and he's a great vascular surgeon. But what he told me, Fikri, once we die, it's our students who continue our road. So on the left corner, that's me when I had hair, now I lost all my hair, okay? Then you go to training, you try to get research. To do research, you should go to a mentor. I went to Prof. Linguist, who's really an authority in disaster medicine. You work with him, you learn that. He keeps actually supporting me in the conferences, keeps talking to me, is really a great man. And then you go to clinical practice. And then what? We will go at the end, we will go under the ground. I've been actually in 11 countries. And I know my maybe 12th country will be the country under the ground. We have to be realistic of what we want. And I know people who are so knowledgeable, but they keep denying because they say if we teach them, they will compete us. They will never compete with you if you're really a good teacher. I never competed with my linguist. I will never reach his stage. And what we live in is our students who really will love it here. Ashraf, you see, Ashraf, 16 years old, he had no paper. Everyone was telling, what are you? He was asking questions, good questions. People actually tried to suppress him for 16 years. He had 52 publications. He's joining us, inshallah, soon as an assistant professor, hoping he will be the future professor of trauma. Don't undermine people, respect them. You know, each of them, Hamid is the best expert in trauma registers in the whole Middle East. He developed 3 registers from scratch, not from the American College, but all registers. So you respect people, you go with them. Mr. Muhammad, he's originally Pakistani, came from China for 2 years. He had the best paper I've written by his name. These are systematic reviews. If you go now to water surgery, there's a paper on ATRS. The citation average 6 times. It's by his name. I told him once he left, look, Muhammad, I didn't give you a lot of money, but you know how much this project costs? It costs about 200,000 dirhams. It's yours by your name. That was more money than the money you eat. So what we get is in actually recognition of our students. Now, I'm proud of Ashraf. Ashraf is in the middle of the desert, by the way, in a small hospital, and he is now an independent researcher. That means he's doing his work alone in the desert, not in a hospital, which is a university hospital, and he could reach up to injury. You know, if you are a researcher, you know how much tough to go to energy. Now, just to tell you, 2 of the people whom I supervised in the college, senior people, I don't really just supervise the young people, they were promoted to assistant professor and full professor. Professor Glibna was currently to write, I was honored to be your student. It's a humble thing to do that. But unless you go to people, they would never respect that. It's difficult for a professor to write a letter like that, but you have to be kind to them. Now, this is my professor. Professor Six Linguist, I owe him a lot. I had a lecture, full lecture about him, about trauma modeling. Really, he's an extraordinary man. I really learned a lot. I'm happy really one day in education to show you how effective a mentor on the people. I try even in the way I speak about it. Now, I will never reach you. Last year, he did 2 books and he's almost done 80 years. So, just to tell you, this is John Windsor. He's a very famous pancreatic surgeon. He wrote to me an email asking to me, actually in August 2014, I went, Fikri, why are we doing this? Why are we killing ourselves? Why we don't sleep too much? I mean, you've noticed me, oh, this crazy man is working too much. So, why do we do that? I told him, look, John, I think we do this because we love it. I don't think that there is something rewarding and challenging more than exploring the unknown and trying to answer deep questions. Best regards, Fikri. He directly emailed me and said, I think I will quote you, Fikri, for that. Now, just to conclude, what are the pillars? The pillars of research, if you want to do research, and I encourage everyone to do that because it's a high-thinking process. You have to have clear. You have to be committed. It's not a job. We leave 10 p.m. every day. You have to have a high ethics. Don't steal. Don't lie. Don't falsify. People will not respect you. You will be one call. You destroy your career. You have actually people to help you, and I was privileged for that. You need a teamwork. You need to learn methodology, attend courses. There's no way that you can do it without this. You need to be persistent and patient. Our colleague has mentioned that. And finally, the least of all is money. Money is not the main thing, and really I would like to thank you for sharing this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Fikri. We open it if anybody has about 1 or 2 burning questions to ask